We have breaking news. Auburn football has made an official announcement that they are claiming 4 additional national championships for a total of 9 national titles. So I'll go through them.
This is the College Football Enquirer. I am Andy Staples. I am here with Ross Dellenger and Steven Godfrey. And we have much to talk about. But first, I want to let Ross, mostly Ross, I think he did the heavy lifting on this. Because on Thursday's show, we said the Michigan sanctions are coming out on Friday, but we're just going to predict it, and you can laugh at us if we're wrong, or if we're right, then you'll get the discussion. Well, guess what? Ross Dellenger nailed it. That's the only thing that got hammered, by the way, Ross, because everyone's like, they're going to get hammered.
Yeah.
You don't get hammered unless you can't play in the postseason or you can't play on TV, and nobody got hammered.
No, nobody got hammered. And I know that was to the disappointment of much of the college sports fan base that doesn't reside in Ann Arbor. But that's what happened, right? The NCAA decided to go with financial penalties, which were historic and probably going to amount to $35 million or more dollars. But as you said, Andy, no postseason ban, no vacated championship, no sort of scholarship reductions. What they're kind of moving away from all of that sort of in this new era, and they decided to just sort of bring the financial hammer, so to speak, down.
Which for Michigan doesn't really hurt very much. Because they're rich.
How honestly,
that's right.
How easy, it's hard to even say that out loud. How easy is it for them to stroke that $20 million? Is there a payment plan? Or is it just
30?
All
it's going to be $35 million, probably. So it's going to be the total is probably going to be more like 30. The initial report, I don't think was fully accurate. But it'll be at least 30, if not 35. And that's a good question about how the payments work. I don't know how soon. Obviously, they're appealing.
Well, it's part of it's money they don't get if it all works
withholding
out.
withholding of distribution.
But in the pantheon of like Auburn buyouts, this isn't going to pinch them at all, is it?
I don't know. I mean, like you think about everybody's having to pay like $20 million extra now that they weren't budgeting. And so now you have $35 million on top of that. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure they would rather not pay it, which is why they're appealing it to get it down. I'm sure they're trying to get the penalty down, which maybe they will, right? Maybe it'll go from 35 to 25 or something like that.
What I'm angling for here, Ross, is like I want someone from Michigan to get in my DMs this week and be like, to poor mouth just a little bit, because it would be the first time that's ever happened where I've actually heard Michigan boosters say like, oh, well, hey, hang on, tough economy, inflation's not down.
But it's money they don't get, and it's over 2 years. And the bulk of it was coming next year, because that's what it is. The bulk of this is when the college football playoff revenue goes up, the share per Big Ten school is $21 million next academic year, not this year. So that's where the big chunk of it is. It's that them not getting that, and so they do have some time to figure that out. And as Ross said, they're appealing. Sharon Moore suspended for 3 games. The 2 that we already knew he was going to be suspended for this year, they tacked on the Western Michigan game at the start of next year, which was almost seemed like it was designed by Michigan, because the strategy was going to be if they gave them extra games beyond the 2, which are the Central Michigan and Nebraska games, that they were going to appeal essentially to punt the remainder of the suspension to next season anyway. So the committee just did that for them.
This is how galaxy brained I am on this now. Maybe this makes me pro Michigan. I've come all the way around. You can now market yourself to coordinators and assistants saying, come to Michigan, you'll get to be head coach for a game or 2 for at least a couple of years to better position yourself on the market. This is how good the situation is for Ann Arbor.
Yeah, there you go.
It's truly amazing. Yeah. Want to coach the Western Michigan game?
Why not get some reps, right?
Tactic,
Yeah.
Just revolve. There's kind of a revolving door of head coaches.
Yeah. So do you guys remember a couple years ago, it was a little bit of a fad where veteran head coaches would let really young assistants sort of coach the spring game, right? And they would get out there and be like, we're getting reps for these guys. We're a development program for our coaches. Dude, to hell with that. You can be a position coach in Michigan, and you might beat Ohio State as head coach. We don't know. Look, I have yet to see why this is a problem. Yeah, exactly. Like the current sitting head coach, this was like a Disney movie, like Rookie of the Year, like one of the, like, oh, wait, I'm calling the plays? Like, this is amazing. It's like a 9-year-old on the mound in a baseball game. I would like to point out, this is why you should like and subscribe to this show, because Ross won't boast. That's why I'm here. Ross was 97% accurate predicting all of this. We were worried we were going to put up a show that was going to be instantly outdated, but instead, this show legally has the power of divination. So you should like and subscribe. Ross is going to have gambling picks every week. And just get rich, boys.
No gambling picks, Godfrey. No gambling picks. This was kind of an easy one just because, a couple of years ago we had the Tennessee case, right? And I think, like, although they weren't exactly the same, I think with the penalties that were levied on Tennessee and the way the NCAA infractions is sort of, the Committee on Infractions is sort of moving when it comes to, like, not as much doling out the vacated wins in the postseason ban, it was pretty clear that wasn't going to happen. Also, there's something else to, like, be mentioned here. Maybe this is the last thing we say about this issue is Tennessee's in the SEC and Michigan's in the Big Ten. Those two leagues sort of run college sports right now. Yeah. And I just think they have their leagues and their commissioners probably have really big influence on some of the decisions that have been made. And I'll probably leave it at that.
Well, and didn't Greg Sankey speak on behalf of Tennessee, and then Tony Petitti sent a letter
that's
on behalf of Michigan.
So, Ross,
those are
what you're saying is that
to note, I believe.
It feels like Central Michigan death penalty is still on the table, is what you're saying.
Perhaps.
Jerry Tarkanian is still saying, he's chewing on the towel in heaven and saying, I told you so.
For the uninitiated, that bit about punishing smaller schools for the bigger school infraction, like, I don't think it actually holds true today, but it's still a good bit.
I believe the line was the NCAA got so mad at Kentucky that they crushed Cleveland State. The Tennessee one's funny that you bring that up, Ross, because I'm pretty sure I don't have the exact transcript of Tennessee COI hearing, but my guess is it was just Danny White, their athletic director, standing up and saying, could you just make it where we write the check to you instead of Jeremy Pruitt for the buyout? Because that's really all we wanted here. We just would rather pay you than him.
Yeah. It's funny, like, I know we don't want to linger on this. Also, the only thing that's made Michigan fans mad this entire segment is being compared to Tennessee in any way, shape, or form. Even in the realm of rule breaking, they're like, whoa. We engineered a spy scandal. We did not put anything in a fast food bag. Both of these
would never.
Well, they really wouldn't. The COI moment on both of these is interesting because, Danny White, he definitely gets gangster status in the world of ADs. And this has been 2 in a row, really, where the school has been able to bend the NCAA directly to its will, Andy, like in the most specific and necessary way. I'll do this really fast to catch everybody up. Tennessee basically didn't want to eat a buyout that a previous staff was owing to a fired head coach and Jeremy Pruitt, right? They wanted to come in. They wanted to clean house. They didn't have as deep of pockets as you might assume in that moment. And so they actually really used the NCAA's apparatus of enforcement to void the previous head coach's contract. This started in the modern era. This starts all the way back with a guy named David Beatty, who was head coach at Kansas, and there was another cash strap situation there. And I don't want to get into all this, but this is 2 in a row now where the NCAA has kind of been played a fool. And as long as you can write that check to get out of it, you're good.
Well, the David Beatty one was even funnier because Kansas wasn't going to pay the buyout.
Yeah.
But then David Beatty's lawyer brought in video of the Les Miles Kansas staff, which succeeded David Beatty's staff, breaking the same rule that Kansas had accused David Beatty of breaking. And they asked the then AD Jeff Long, so you're going to fire this staff too and not pay the buyout? And suddenly David Beatty's buyout got paid.
It was some serious broke boy status back then too, because I think Beatty's buyout was like
$3 million.
Yeah. It was. I was going to say it was under 5 for sure, but they needed all available funds to pay for the wise investment of late stage Les Miles to save their program.
Okay, let us move to the topic that blew the Michigan sanctions off the proverbial front page, even though there isn't really a front page anymore. Everybody just clicks on social links. But it was a story that came out on Friday. And Ross, this is something that you've been following very, very closely. Tony Petitti, the commissioner of the Big Ten, this story came out from ESPN, from Pete Thamel. It was essentially a leak of an idea that had been kind of blue sky thinking, no bad ideas situation, where Tony Petitti had mentioned a 24 or a 28 team college football playoff instead of the current 12 team or the 16 team that has been proposed. The 28 team, I believe, if I have this correct, would have 7 automatic bids for the Big Ten and the SEC and 5 automatic bids for the ACC and Big 12. That would be a thing.
Yeah, a thing indeed. Just so we have our days right, I think it was Saturday around lunchtime that this came out, and I'll give the timeline of building up this build up to this, because it really goes way back, but I don't want to go too far back. But obviously, a year and a half ago, the Big Ten is the first one that proposed the 4-4-2-2 sort of playoff format, where 4 automatic bids go to the SEC and Big Ten, and 2 to the ACC, Big 12, 1 G6, 1 at large, or 3 at large. And that was a 16 team that they proposed last spring. Not this past spring, but last spring. And then it was shot down, and then they proposed a 3-3-2-2, also shot down. And then they went a year without really proposing anything, and negotiations kind of stalled and all that. And then this past spring, the 4-4-2-2 obviously came up again, right? And there was serious momentum for it in both the SEC and Big Ten. And then came Destin at SEC meetings, where the SEC coaches came out against it and sort of stalled it and paused any talk of it. And I think from that time, so it was Memorial Day, to now, so roughly 2.5 months, there's been a lot of things thrown against the wall. A lot of things that haven't been reported or talked about, because they're just back of the napkin sort of things.
Right.
This is one of them.
Okay.
This is one of them. This is an idea
this one got
thrown
cherry
against the
picked
wall.
out of the back of the napkin.
It did, and I guess I think I know why, but
okay.
But like,
can you tell us why?
I'll give an example of some other back of the napkin things. Back in June, the SEC ADs had a meeting, and a 32 team playoff was seriously discussed in the meeting room. A 32 team.
So hang on.
Yeah. It'd have been an 8-8, 6-6, 2, whatever, blah blah blah. Okay, so like, there's a lot of things being like thrown against the wall. And
so you said, hang on, Ross. You said 32 was proposed
32.
by the SEC
This was
inside of an SEC meeting.
That's right.
Okay,
that's right.
And that one never saw the light of day.
Right, because again, these are things sort of like just being tossed against the wall.
This is like kids trying to figure out the world in a dorm room, maybe under the influence. We're coming up with ideas, right? Like, we're going to build a society. But this is like, no, but seriously, this was just blue sky thinking, like everyone has said. Yeah. Amongst a group of people involved in the Big Ten. So what I'm curious about, Ross, is like you've reported it. You've been on this at every step of the way, at sort of the infinitesimal step, right? Hearing a theory or a proposal is nothing new in this process.
No.
We can get into maybe why I think that's slowly killing the perception of the sport, but why was this one cherry-picked a week before we start playing tackle football and sort of played out in such a way where there's an ESPN push alert, it becomes a dominant narrative focus for a week? Why, if there are so many of these being floated out by various people on both sides of the SEC Big Ten fence, why was this one pulled out? It's a massive headline on ESPN, and all of a sudden the Big Ten is ruining the sport. What's I don't understand how we got here if this is just one of many in a discussion.
Yeah, that's a good question, and I'll give the timeline of this specific sort of this latest back of the napkin sort of concept.
Okay,
the 24 and the 28 team. So we're taping this on Tuesday, so it was 8 days ago, I believe, is when Tony Petitti sort of presented this idea to his athletic directors. So it was early last week. And then the Big Ten administrators sent it to SEC, office, SEC headquarter administrators, probably early to midweek last week. And then, I kind of heard buzz about it on Thursday, and then again, pretty loud on Friday. And then for the first time since this was sort of introduced, SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey and Petiti got on a call Friday afternoon, just a preliminary call about it. And from that call, at least from what I had learned, is there wasn't necessarily any, serious action, right? There wasn't necessarily some big agreement or anything like that. So it's all pretty preliminary, I assume, because the Big Ten athletic directors were shown it, right? And then it just kind of starts to buzz a little more. But this week the SEC ADs, they're meeting now. I think they meet on Wednesday too in Birmingham for their just regularly scheduled August in-person meeting, and I assume they'll talk about it. But I don't know why exactly this one got to the level of reportability, because not only was there a 32 team back earlier this summer discussed in the SEC AD room, there was a 20 team, and I got the bracket for that from the ACC room as well. So we just there's just a lot of things being thrown, and all of it doesn't mean we should report it and make a big headline out of it.
Yeah,
but that's
I'm
kind
really
of what happened
here.
this week. That's what's happened last weekend. Whether that's, and that was not, that you'd have to ask the person who originally reported that. Right at ESPN,
yeah,
we can get him. We should bring him in. I don't have necessarily an answer for it, because I know that on Friday I thought, well, this isn't a story, at least not yet.
Right, because it's one of many. So just again, pardon my idiocy here and my slowness here. So this is one among many theories, but this one in particular gets leaked and platformed for an entire week. To what end and to what successful goal? It wasn't to prevent. It wasn't like oh my God, Petiti's out of control and he's somehow got the nuclear codes, because this wasn't going just because this theory was floated doesn't mean it was going to actually take place. It's one of many theories. It requires the SEC's assistance essentially to become reality.
Big time, right?
So
and the SEC ADs hadn't even seen it. They hadn't even seen it.
And Andy, you had this theory. Yeah, go ahead.
I think somebody in the Big Ten who heard it was like, we got to smother this thing in the crib. We got to make sure this never, ever rises to the level of serious action. But and this person, whoever it was, or people, whoever they were, knew that by exposing it to oxygen now, the response would be what the response was, which is this is the dumbest idea anybody's ever had. They need to kill it with fire.
But what about all the other theories that have floated the last 6 months? Why is this one so dangerous?
Well, it's not that. It's
because Andy, we spent 3 days as a media collective saying, God, Petiti's such an idiot. To me, it's like that was the intended effect. It wasn't
the people who talked about the 32 and know what the public reaction would be to that. You got to get down the road with these things internally, behind the scenes, or they will never have, because the resistance to anything beyond 16 is going to be so high. The resistance to 16 is already high. And it's interesting because I've always thought 16 would be the right number, but once I saw 12 in action, I actually now think 12 is the right number. I don't know that they should go beyond 12. And I kind of hope they never agree on anything, because if they don't agree, they'll just stay at 12.
That feels like a high likelihood.
So I keep getting a question of okay, what now?
Yeah.
Right. Okay, this is out there. What happens now? Well, everybody should know, obviously, and most people know, certainly you two know, that this year it's 12, right? And it's the format, and that's set. We're all talking about what happens next year, and they have a deadline of December 1 to decide on a format for next year. This 20, I shouldn't have to say this, but I'm going to say it. This 24 and 2018 playoff is not happening next year. This is not happening. From everything every intel I've gotten, and maybe I'll eat those words one day, but I don't think so. This is not happening. So this is far, probably a little further in the distance, whether it's 2 years or 4 years or 6 years or never, maybe never.
The logistical challenges of that, you can't do that.
Getting rid of championship games, you got to get rid of championship games. You potentially have to move the season around, the regular season. I mean, there's just a lot of things that would have to happen that probably cannot happen within a year. So the question is, well, like what happens now? And I think it starts this week with the SEC athletic director meeting. What did Greg Sankey and the SEC ADs come out of this meeting on Wednesday or Thursday? What do they come out saying about it? What was the discussion in the room? Are they for it in any way? Or are they for at least examining it? Or are they for, which is more what I hear about, trying to get to 16 first before we go to 24 or 28? And that seems to be more of the journey there, the path.
This brings up another question, Ross, because these two things are tied together. The college football playoff discussion and the SEC scheduling discussion, whether they're going to play 8 or 9 conference games in the future. They have to decide whether they're going to play 8 or 9 conference games for 26, which, by the way, probably makes the decision for 27 as well, because they kind of be paired years usually. So when do they need to make that decision by?
Yeah, back at SEC spring meetings, I think the thought was by mid-August, certainly by the start of football season. And so the thought was, obviously, these in-person meetings come at a coincidental time, that they'll make that decision this week, or at least talk enough about it where they can make the decision. The presidents at least can make the decision maybe next week or the week after. So by football season, they got to make that decision. And every sign over the last couple months, unlike the signs in the spring, pointed to them staying at 8 games, right? In the spring, it was more like this 4-4-2-2, right? A lot of the athletic directors were on board with that and then going to 9 games. But it seems like over the summer that has shifted, and there's been more of a lean to just remaining at 8. And if they remain at 8, the Big Ten isn't going to, it's been pretty clear. I mean, they've said it publicly. They're not going to budge on the 5+11 format, the 5 AQs in the 11 at-large 16-team format. They're not going to agree to it if the SEC stays at 8. So we may be at 12 for 1 or 2 more years, as everybody sort of works again to get to more 16 as opposed to the 24-28. It's just, can we add like 4 more instead of like 14?
And maybe
more?
they'll just play 12 this year, next year, and be like, hey, this is pretty cool. Let's just do this.
Ross,
I don't think they will. But
does it ever come up in conversation with these stakeholders, the sources that you deal with on the administrative side and the ownership class of this sport, that they are at all concerned or aware of a fatigue point at the consumer level? There's this understanding or assumption, I should say, that college football fans are just going to constantly accept a never-ending change cycle. Now, there are certain things these guys can't control. That they wanted to control not paying players, but that broke through. That levy broke. Transfer portal, et cetera. All I ever sense now is a fatigue point amongst fans of just genuine confusion. You said earlier in this segment, I shouldn't have to say this, but we're going to play 12 this year, or we're going to play 12 next year, most likely. It's kind of terrifying that we do have to say this and constantly reinform fans to the format. Also, I'm curious, do these guys understand how often they're shooting themselves in the foot with the devaluation of the actual football product? Because we are constantly living in the future. For the last 4 years, all we've done is talk about the next 6 months, 9 months from now, this decision's coming, this is coming, we're going to reevaluate this. Hey, this brand new thing that ESPN just spent hundreds of millions of dollars in advertising to introduce to the world? It's funny, because I talked to someone who worked on the ad campaign last year to introduce like Joe Six-Pack across America to the 12-team format. We are in a state of anxiety because anxiety is about living in the future constantly, where the average fan is confused. You are having to say these things. Like, does any of this register with these people, or do they just not care because it's just a matter of securing more revenue?
I think revenue and access are more important to the schools and the stakeholders now than probably what the casual college football fan thinks. That's
a scary thing, man.
It is, but that's
because you start to ignore your rank and file consumer. We are in the entertainment business, y'all. This is no different than watching the movie going population like shift their priorities. The idea that forever and ever and ever, all these generations of fans are going to pony up this amount of money and time and mind share to something that is continually devaluing them. This is a dangerous path, and I think the current stakeholders aren't considering this at all. They're in, I guess, Ross, like a gold rush kind of mentality. Like, you just got to get yours now, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I think that it was just exacerbated by the House case and the revenue share, right? An extra 20 million. So now it just shifts more and more toward generating more revenue and providing more access for the most powerful programs, the biggest and the richest programs, and that's like the reality. It's sort of unfortunate in a lot of ways, but that is like where we are now. We'll say this: I think that when there was really strong momentum for the 4-4-2-2 format, back in, let's say, February to April, that stretch where it really looked like this thing was going to happen. The SEC athletic director room and many of the presidents were on board with the Big Ten on doing it and all that. I think there was a sense among many people in the SEC, including like the top guy in the SEC, that this wasn't going to be good for the fan and wasn't going to be embraced by all of college football nationally. It wasn't good for all of college football nationally. And I think part of Greg Sankey's sort of presentation to the coaches at SEC meetings in Destin, I think that was a little bit of a backdrop to it. In AD, I mean, the presentation he made to coaches, ADs, and presidents all in Destin, I think that was a backdrop, was, look, this is not popular, right? It's not going to be popular. And we're losing we lost sort of the narrative this spring on this thing. And so I think that was, Godfrey, it was considered, especially specifically with that. But in general, I think revenue and access is more important than anything to them right now than anything else.
So this is just yet another example of this is a sport without central governance. So this is the NFL if the NFC East had total agency to negotiate their own television deal. Let that sink in, by the way. I've used that example before. Like, imagine Jerry Jones without a commissioner reining him in. That's what we're dealing with.
Pretty much. But since we mentioned all this, this is the backdrop, by the way. When we come back, we'll focus on one school where the AD went to his board and said, here's what's got to happen. It's a much bigger picture story, but we can tell the story using Virginia Tech and what happens on the football field now and what happens in the boardroom might help predict the future. We'll be right back. So we just talked about what all these schools and conferences are trying to do. Everyone, this massive grab for access for money and what it all means for the future. And the fact of the matter is the college football playoff and the future formats of that kind of irrelevant compared to the overall structure of the sport. So let's talk about what Virginia Tech Athletic Director Whit Babcock told his board this week, because I think it's very informative when it comes to Virginia Tech for sure, but also when it comes to the rest of the sport. Whit Babcock made this incredible slide deck. There's little turkey footprints as a watermark on every slide. It's a beautiful thing. But basically, he went to his board and said, okay, here's what the future of the sport is going to look like. Here is what we as Virginia Tech are doing right now. If we continue resourcing our athletic department the way we are, then we will not be in the upper tier of the sport. We will no longer be in the top tier of the sport. And if we don't get on board and start spending a bunch more money on athletics, then we're not going to be in whatever's next, in the top division of whatever's next. And it was very honest. It's something that I know all of us have heard from athletic directors behind the scenes, but this was one very publicly saying it to their own board. And I mean, it was because they try to avoid saying this stuff. Like, we might not be in the top tier. And guys, I'm wondering, when you saw this, when you saw what Whit Babcock told his board, what were you thinking?
I thought it was the Jerry Maguire speech. And I say that with, there's a lot of ADs that I think are of let's just be nice today, like a particular personality type in their level of disingenuousness. And Whit's not in that crew. I think Whit's always been a very transparent. I think he's been very honest about the state of the game when he was at Cincinnati, when he got to Virginia Tech. Think about what he oversaw too. You talk about modern mentality versus old mentality. He helped transition Frank Beamer into retirement, and that guy that's a statue brand inside of a football program. He takes a program that was obsolete all the way to the national championship game with a generational football player, right? They become part of the college football zeitgeist. And then things sort of peter out as we modernize the game. And then he's tasked with bringing this thing back into relevance. He makes two hires that are very different in Justin Fuente and Brent Pry. I feel bad for him. And my first reaction was, this is the Jerry Maguire speech, because if you've ever seen that film, it's a sports agent who becomes incredibly honest in the first act, and he's out of a job at the end of the first act. That's how I feel for Whit right now.
Show me the money.
I mean, I don't.
That's
ever
what he
want to
said.
use social,
essentially,
yeah, and I don't want to use social media as a barometer of anything, because it's worse than a funhouse mirror these days. But there's like a lot of Virginia Tech fans who are angry at him, and I don't know why.
All he did was explain reality to people.
Yeah. And Andy, I think the problem here is that the reality in the minds of a lot of football fan bases, especially, what are we calling the Power 4 that's not the Power 2? Do you guys have a label for this? Do I need to come up like the mid 2?
Well, actually, Whit had it. So Whit had a slide with 4 potential outcomes for the future of college athletics. Bifurcation, which would be the top 4 and everyone else, which I think we can all agree is not what's going on right now. Number 2 is trifurcation, the top 2, the next 2, and everyone else. Virginia Tech would be squarely in the next 2.
The next 2,
because the SEC and the Big Ten would be the top 2. Number 3 is Super League, a Super League that has 3 tiers, and then everyone else. And number 4 would be a complete reorganization with what he calls the Power 12, which would be the top 72 schools, and the Group of 8, which would be the bottom 64 schools. So that would be your Premier League and your championship division, I believe.
Okay, so really fast, here's the sermon, because Virginia Tech's, Andy, I agree, they're a great proxy for a lot of other schools right now. There was an idea after Beamer retires, we need to be modern. We need to be football modern. It was all about the football product. So we're going to hire Fuente. He's got a great offensive mind. That doesn't work out, I would say, largely for personality reasons. I'm going to try and filibuster through this in about 45 seconds. We bring in Brent Pry from Penn State, because Penn State recruited Virginia extremely well. He knows the area. He was also on the staff. He's kind of a disciple inside of that tree, right? He was, I think, a defensive assistant there. So we're going to bring in Brent Pry.
He was DC at Penn State. Oh, yeah, at Virginia Tech. Yes, correct.
Yeah, coming up. So he was a guy who sort of understood. And Pry, if you've ever met him, he's like originally from Buffalo, but he's incredibly good. Like, we're all Southerners here, and he can pass for Southern extremely well. He felt like the hire. But all of those moves were made in a football mindset. The idea was Brent Pry needs to come back, and he needs to make all the Virginia high school coaches feel good. We need to recruit Charlotte. We need to recruit DC. That's not the problem. It's part of what you have to do. But what Babcock is saying here, and there's so many football fan bases who think like, oh, we got to get the right coach in to fix the problem. The money is the problem. That's it, and that's all forever.
The money
and ever.
was the problem with Fuente, and the money. I'll give you an example. Just this past offseason, Virginia Tech's offensive coordinator Tyler Bowen left to become the offensive line coach at Ohio State. Not the offensive coordinator, the offensive line coach.
And a couple years ago, Andy, Virginia Tech and Ohio State are playing each other on Labor Day. And we're in our brains, and in Virginia Tech's brain, and in Kansas State's brain, and in Baylor's brain, and all these other mid-2 schools, we're equal, right? We're
all the same group.
We're all the same. And the money is creating a complete disassociation. I know a lot of fans listen to it. Yeah, go ahead.
Let's contextualize the money, too. He had a slide about ACC operating budget estimates. And so there's 18 schools, because obviously Notre Dame's included, because they are a member of the ACC in all but football. Notre Dame is number 1 at $215 million. It just says private institution, but I think we all know which one it is. And then Clemson is number 2 at $190 million. Basically, what he was saying is over the next 10 years, Virginia Tech, which is at $122 million, number 14 in the ACC, needs to try to move into the top 5 by getting toward that $200 million a year range. And that will require more money from the university side, which has been a no-no for schools in the Power Conference to say, hey, we need campus to kick some more in here.
Yeah. Can I ask a quick question, guys? Either one of you can answer this. This is just something that occurred to me. If you include the modern era as starting with the BCS, okay, is this the poorest school to ever play for a national championship in the modern era? I think it has to be.
BCS
like
4, yes.
BCS 14 playoff, 12-team playoff.
Yeah.
So this is why they're an interesting case study, because they played Florida State and lost a national championship game 25 years ago. This is why I'm bringing this up, because there is an expectation amongst the rank and file fans, by the way, as there should be. I'm not disparaging Hokie fans. That we should be able to get back there. We should be competing with Clemson, right? In fact, Pry's boilerplate quote, when we all did the car wash thing, when a coach gets hired, they set their agenda, they talk to us in the media. He said, we were Clemson before Clemson was Clemson. I bet he said it to every freaking reporter in the country the year he got hired. Brother, you are not Clemson, and he knows that. I'm not disparaging Pry. This is why you're not Clemson. It's just financial. It's not cultural. And there's nothing he can do as a football coach to close that gap. That's what I'm trying to impart on fans right now. He may still get fired, and they may fire Babcock too. Yeah, but that won't change any of the money.
You know, we've seen some ADs get more and more public about this, right? As we go, and this probably happened the last year, especially with the House case. Like I think about a year and a half ago or so, when Michael Alford of Florida State had a presentation right before they sued, I think, formally the ACC, and it was somewhat similar. Basically, like, if we don't, now his sort of message to the board was, if we don't leave the ACC or change the ACC's distribution model so we can earn more revenue, we'll be left behind. And obviously, Whit's is, if the university doesn't help us more with revenue and with financially, then we'll be left behind. Everybody is in sort of fear of being left behind. And it's been like 3 to 5 years of this. Like, everybody's just living in fear of being left behind. And it's part of, obviously, the realignment, the conference realignment that we saw, of all the bigger brands sort of consolidating together and separating themselves from the lower resource programs. And I think even down to the level of like what happened with the Mountain West in the Pac-12, right? The Mountain West 5 leaving for the Pac-12, probably just to remove themselves from the bottom of the Mountain West, so that when that split happens, they can say, we're not part of them. See, we're over here. We're different. And everybody's just sort of obsessed with this sort of split. And we're always wondering, right, like, when will this happen? And I think most people would point to, right, and we've talked about it maybe on our first show, like, our first show back is like the 2030 to 2032 span, where you have the Big 12, Big 10, CFP, and NCAA basketball tournaments, contracts all come up.
Andy, there's a lot of pride, as there should be, by the way, among some of these schools that might not be on the inside of a super league, right?
Right. And so here's where it gets interesting. Another thing he said to his board is that he laid out how the ACC is now an uneven revenue distribution conference. That was the upshot of the Florida State Clemson lawsuit when they settled it. Basically, if you are a better football program, if you're on TV more, you draw bigger crowds, bigger sets of eyeballs on TV, then you're going to make more money. He predicted that the SEC and the Big Ten will go to that sooner rather than later. Guys, what is the question we always get? It's always, when is the SEC going to kick out Vanderbilt? When's the Big Ten going to kick out Purdue? And I always tell people, they're not going to kick them out. If anything, the Super League would coalesce around the wealthiest schools saying, hey, let's all be together.
Yes.
And these guys aren't with us.
We're all new to this dynamic. Correct.
Mm-hmm.
We're all new to this dynamic. So I think individually, I know, Andy, you've said this. I know I've said this, Ross. Your role's a little bit different because you're more straight ahead reporter. But the day doesn't come where we kill Vanderbilt in the night to bring in Ohio State. What happens is we stop thinking as a sport about regionality as identity. And so that sounds fancy, but what I'm actually saying is, one day the world is going to change in college football when Alabama wakes up one morning and says, I have more in common with Ohio State than I do with Mississippi State or Auburn or South Carolina. And that's it. That's it. That's how it happens. Not the world's greatest fan of Greg Sankey here, but I will say this. When the man says he's doing something, you should listen. And he has basically, this is one of my favorite moments the last 5 years of the sport. Greg Sankey says, hey, I'm reading this book. And it was basically like OJ saying, hey, you know that book I wrote, If I Did It? This book right here. This book right here, I'm going to hold the camera. If you let me preface this. If you're listening to this, you're watching this, you're consuming this, and you don't care about any sport off of the American shore, that is fine. And if you think soccer is godless pagan communism, also fine. You need to read this book. This is the book. This is Greg Sankey's favorite book, he said, or the favorite book that he's read. It's called The Club. It's by Josh Robinson and Jonathan Clegg. They're both Wall Street Journal reporters. There is very, 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 very little soccer in this book. This book is going to tell you what they are trying to do. And it's not that difficult to imagine. 5 years ago, people laughed at it. But the day that Alabama and Ohio State have a beer, so to speak, and say, well, shoot, why aren't we playing each other every year? And you know what? Michigan and Florida.
And the club is about the formation of the Premier League in England.
Yes.
So it is essentially Manchester United and Arsenal having that conversation. To shout out John and Josh, who are awesome. They also have written books about Formula One and Ronaldo versus Messi, and they are incredible. And I don't care about those sports at all. And I just burn through those books. So read it because it's a great book. But if you really want to know what's happening in college, why things are happening in college football now is English soccer circa 1989. They're in the same place.
88. Yeah, absolutely. And the reason why, when I go pick my kids up from school, and a third of the kids in Nashville, Tennessee are wearing soccer jerseys and not baseball, you got to be kidding me. No way. There's not as much football, American football. I'm just telling you, there's college jerseys. NFL is probably suffering the most from this. But a third of those kids in that school have on Chelsea. They have on Man City. This is why. This is how it happens. But the reality of this story, to bring it back to Virginia Tech, is not everybody's going to make it. And so there should be anxiety. If you're Purdue or South Carolina, there should be anxiety. But the anxiety that I'm trying to insert in you is what Virginia Tech is feeling right now. It's what the Big 12, it's what Oklahoma State is feeling right now. They just got left, right? They won't be the last ones. And this isn't me wagging a finger, because Greg Sankey's remit is not to be the best person possible for college football. That's not his job. His job is to advance his group's agenda to its best possible point. This is why, because we don't have centralized governing in this sport, it's only ever going to be the success of individual groups inside of it. No one is ever going to sit down and go, hey, guys, what's the best thing for this sport?
Well, somebody's trying to. I mean, like Ross, the Smash Capital people are trying to get everyone together and say, hey, you can pool your TV rights if you can change this law, and everybody can make more money, and the SEC and the Big Ten will still make more than everybody else. Right. But I'm curious on your thoughts on this. I still think the Big Ten and the SEC people want the power gap to be bigger. They're more concerned about the power gap than the money gap.
You can walk out power gap for people. Yeah,
sure.
What do we mean by power gap specifically?
They run.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, I mean, look, part of the reason that I think the SEC and the Big Ten, I think there's two reasons. The SEC and the Big Ten have pushed back against the Smash Capital, which let's maybe dive into a couple of the for the listeners who don't remember. Lynn Perna, he started sort of a Super League sort of proposal. They don't like to be called a Super League, but just for our sake, let's call it that.
Yeah.
And it's sort of on pause, you might say. It is sort of like drifted off and what's replaced it is the Smash Capital folks, which is Smash Private Equity. And they want to do, right? They want to create, it's sort of changing. The model has sort of changed a little bit. And I wrote a story on this back in, I guess it was October, so about 10 months ago. And they're still very much kicking today. They're still alive, meeting with schools, meeting with school presidents. But there's a pushback, obviously, from the SEC and Big Ten on this model because it would consolidate media rights, first of all, right? And it would more level the playing field. And why in the world would they want the playing field leveled in any kind of way, right? Because they would lose sort of their advantage or some of their advantage in their power, the power gap, as Andy mentioned. Now, that's not to say eventually the SEC and Big Ten will do their own version of this, right? I mean, That's what's been playing out, and that's what we heard after my story last October. The lovely commissioners of both of those leagues came out publicly. I think it was the next day after their joint SEC Big Ten AD meetings, and basically, for lack of a better phrase, just crapped all over it, right? Crapped all over the plan because they basically said publicly, hey, we'll just do this ourselves. We're just going to do this ourselves. Why would we buy into another plan? And the answer, of course, is, well, because that other plan has all of this money with it, all this immediate cash, but their thought is it's just not worth it. And there continues to be conversations with ACC, Big 12, in sort of the group of 6 commissioners, athletic directors, and presidents with the smash capital people. And maybe every now and then there's a conversation with somebody in the Big Ten and SEC with the smash capital people. But right now it just hasn't gained sort of enough support. And I don't know that it ever will. There's certainly questions there.
So to review, because we get this question a lot, I know, Andy, you get it on your show too. It won't be the SEC beats the Big Ten or vice versa. I want to be clear about that. Those brands one day will just sort of cease or become kind of almost like a piece of nomenclature the way. So there was an AFL and an NFL, and then there was an NFL and an AFC and an NFC, something along those lines. And by the way, I'm going to go ahead and curb this. Please don't ask us who's making it. Please don't do that.
Oh.
That is the single question I get if I tell someone what I do for a living right now.
Who makes the top 40, 48?
But you know what? I don't want to be glib about that either. It's because if you can afford to not care about this as a fan, you're a fan of maybe one of 25 to 30 schools tops right now.
Yeah.
But if you're a fan of this
existential for everybody else,
then that's my point, is that there's probably 50 to 80 schools right now. And look, Kent State, ULM, come here, sit down. We're going to have a talk, okay? We're going to go out in the woods for a ride. But if you are a fan of a Big 12 school, an ACC school that isn't Miami or maybe Florida State, depending on what their credit rating is at the moment, but you feel a perpetual sense of dread and a sort of rejection that the sport is moving along without me, but my value at supporting a Kansas State or a Virginia Tech is, I care as much as an Alabama fan does. I tailgate the same way a Florida fan or a Michigan fan does. So why am I being left out? This is the thing I've been sort of beating to death these last couple of years because, and it kind of goes back to what I asked you in the previous segment, Ross. Are the stakeholders aware that they are doing this to a consumer base? It almost seems that either they aren't or they are and they just don't care.
Obviously I addressed that earlier about how I think to a degree that revenue and access is just so important. Yeah. But one thing I want to,
I wasn't making you answer for all the ADs in the country.
No.
Now, damn it, I want to
give that answer again. Gotcha.
Yeah, come on. It's like a congressional hearing. I'm just going to bring you back to it every time.
One of the things that's really interesting happening is that, the group of 6 and the Big 12 and the ACC, so the 8 of them, seem to be talking a lot with the sort of the smash people. And I think the idea is, and the question certainly is, why are you wasting your time if the Big Ten and SEC won't do this? You can't really create your own thing without the 2 biggest and most powerful conferences, right? Well, I think the answer is, maybe we could put pressure on them in this way. If we're thinking about taking all this money, and that money will give us a chance to catch up with them, will they then agree to this? And I would say no, but I don't know. But that's certainly the talk that's happening right now, and it's certainly interesting.
Well, you could hear it in what Babcock said to his board. There was some messaging in there that seemed consistent with that. But also, here's the other piece of it. The SEC still wants to win, the people who run the SEC. the Big Ten people, the people who run the Big Ten, still want to win. If Alabama, Ohio State, and Michigan and Tennessee all get together independently of them, then they don't win. They would go find somebody else. They'd figure out who runs the new thing. So,
Andy,
this is the
real
part
fast.
it's interesting though. Is how do they win? And I don't know that there's a way for one of these entities to win.
Well, here's my assumption, and this is. Go ahead, and I'm going to put the tinfoil hat on. I'll make one for the show's purpose, and I'll assume that role. Okay, we're leaking
tinfoil
stuff to make. Yeah, and Thursday. We're leaking stuff, guys, and Petiti looks like an idiot, right? That was the top of the show today. It was like, oh man, what if hypothetically, since the Super League was such a strange idea 5 years ago, just roll with me here. When Alabama and Ohio State have that beer, okay, they're gonna have to go to somebody to enact this. By the way, again, in this book, this happens, okay?
It's Rupert Murdoch in the book, which it might be Rupert Murdoch in real life.
Who's better positioned right now than Greg Sankey to say, Ohio State? By the way, Greg Sankey's not from the South. He's from up there. So up there being anything
there.
The South.
Upstate New York and Ohio, very different places.
Yeah. You know, where them Yankees
up
be.
There.
I swear to God, I spent 11 years in D.C. in my youth. I apologize. But the North-South has been the delineating point in this sport for so long. I wonder why. So they're going to look at the best available candidate. And if it is Sankey and most of that SEC apparatus or structure, then I think, Andy, they win. I think you have to have an executive, to your point, or an executive group, a sort of logistics committee, to be the one to enact this thing into reality. And I think Sankey is not only positioning the SEC as the future, but really his group. Will it be called the SEC once Ohio State and Michigan and Penn State join? No. But I do think, sort of win, in finger quotes, if they look more appealing, if they import versus someone's going to import and someone's going to export. That's what I think might happen. And I don't think Tony Petitti is going to make a convincing argument right now to Florida, Alabama, and LSU.
Well, Godfrey, we're all south of Canada and we're all east of Europe. So
dang right.
We can all be the Southeastern Conference if we want to. Mm-hmm. When we come back,
Montreal ain't played nobody.
That's right. We come back. We got a coach calling an ESPN ranking, quote unquote, rigged. We'll be right back. Hopefully nobody put away their tinfoil hats just yet. Godfrey promised to make one for the next episode, and hopefully he'll send me one too, because I'm not good at arts and crafts. But great conspiracy theorism this week from Rhett Lashlee, the SMU coach. So ESPN released its FPI rankings. That's the Football Power Index rankings. This is for those who maybe don't know the differences between this is not like a poll that people vote on. This is a computer power ranking, kind of like the people who make the line in Vegas use. It's supposed to be predictive. It's supposed to say if this team played this team, this would be the predicted score. It's like 26.2 to 23.8. And the interesting thing about this, they released these rankings in June. And in the June ranking, Miami was number 9 and Clemson was number 11. Friday, they released them again.
Okay.
Miami dropped to 17 from 9. Clemson dropped to 16 from 11. Needless to say, there were other teams that moved up. SEC and Big Ten teams specifically. Rhett Lashlee saw somebody tweeting about this and replied, because the whole thing is rigged.
Yeah. It's conspiracy. We're going to bring it down, man. This is okay. Let me just interject. Both of you have informed me before we started today that Rhett, as someone I'm not on the beat in the same way, Rhett he's no stranger to throwing out, like, you know, the government's putting stuff in your water type information about college football. Yes,
I've never said that specifically, but
he came on my show.
I'm in support of this. Okay,
he came on my show on 3
Yeah.
the week of the ACC championship game. So his team, SMU, is playing Clemson in the ACC championship game.
Okay.
And he said, I'm barely paraphrasing. This is almost an exact quote. If we all got COVID and couldn't play, we'd be in the playoff.
Well, you could have faked the results, Rhett. I'm just saying, don't talk about it, be about it.
Well, but his point was,
of course,
hey, we're going to try.
Don't penalize us for playing the championship, which they did,
yes,
and of course, in the end,
yeah.
which is funny because I was in Rhett's office but last week or the week before. I was visiting different camps, and I was sitting in his office, and the first thing he wanted to talk about was the future of the college football playoff and how biased and subjective the selection committee is and how much he hates it. And then I reminded him, but Rhett,
and dog, you got in. You got in, man.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter, right? He's seeing the whole picture.
God, I love it.
He thinks
so much.
He's on the Petiti model, right? He's on the AQ model. He's on the NFL model.
Of
he
all
doesn't
the
want
people,
4-4-2-2. He wants 4-4-3-3, right? As far as AQs, but he's on that train.
Of all the people to be Pepe Silva, the head coach of well-funded, well-heeled SMU, who has an extensive Southeastern Conference background. Let's just say that. And hypothetically might be a favorite at a particular opening this year at a Southeastern Conference university or two. I'm not exactly sure what his in-game here is, if there is any, to be the conspiratorial guy here. I just love this. I don't really have an analyst point here other than the fact that he's putting this on Main Street is fantastic. Now, Andy, you mentioned the FPI. I asked around. I called the nerds. All the nerds talk to each other. I'm gonna go ahead and let y'all in on a secret. If you are on the internet and you're like and it's just a string of numbers and letters, formula. Any of those guys watching English soccer at 5 a.m. on a Saturday are also like telling you why the defensive pressure rush rate, zip my zip, blah blah blah. All those nerds talk to each other. Shout out to the nerds. I love them. FPI is maybe not the most well tended to piece of property inside the worldwide leader. I'll leave it at that. And so what I mean by that is that these formulas take modification and tweaking and evaluation because they are subjective at the end of the day. They're not purely analytical because football is an extremely, there's too many variables inside of the data to create a single value set without assuming something. I'll give you a quick example. Like, hey, strength of schedule would affect one team wins by 50, the other team wins by 50. Well, one of them beat up ULM. Shout out to the Warhawks. That's the kind of stuff that these guys, these quants, they do on a week-to-week basis is sort of work on modifying things. FPI, I don't know, y'all, if it has any influence on anything other than the fact that it's splayed all across ESPN, which is not for nothing.
It enrages people, which is why it's useful to ESPN.
Yeah,
which is probably why Bristol's like, it's fine, leave it alone. It makes people mad. We can get 20 tweets out of it, and then we can turn that into a Stephen A. Smith segment.
Which is also why ESPN would love the selection committee and the selection committee show to stick around, despite it really having little to no impact and probably having a negative impact on the field.
Let's drill down, and I will defend ESPN here for a second because if ESPN were to create a conspiracy theory or create a conspiracy to advance ESPN's core business, guess which conference gets crapped on? It ain't the ACC,
correct? Where
the ESPN owns all of their rights. It would be the Big Ten.
It falls apart a little bit for Rhett here, but you know what? Maybe there is. Look, maybe there was a shadow group underneath that pizza restaurant, right? Like maybe we don't know, right? It just no. To Rhett's point, I think if I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt, maybe today's theme is existential damage. SMU was the totem in the offseason conversation, and Rhett is no stranger to the SEC or its fan bases and its boosters and the culture, et cetera. SMU losing at Penn State the way they did, I think, was the sort of like what am I looking
I think
for
Indiana was more the mascot of that.
Well, I think it was both. I mean, I don't think it has to be one or the other
because of the ACC. Like just the conference affiliation. I think I would agree. Like SMU is the one everybody pointed to. At the SEC and Big Ten always pointed to that the whole offseason of this is why we need computers back or AQ models and don't need us.
Because an Alabama team that couldn't beat a Michigan team without a quarterback in a bowl game belonged there instead of SMU. That's basically
the Alabama team that lost 24-3 to an Oklahoma team that didn't have an offensive line or wide receivers.
Yes, that one actually. An Alabama team that could barely beat South Carolina. Yes, that one, Andy.
South Carolina was good. They were. They were a 9-win team too.
I really didn't mean to slight South Carolina at the end. I was just trying to think of the next Alabama thing that happened in my brain. Sorry, Gamecocks. I really didn't mean that.
But the FPI thing is great because this most recent FPI it's wild, guys. It's just dumb. Our producer TJ suggested a segment called Ranking Roulette, and we were going to use the AP poll, but I'm going to use this right now. Picking a team at random, except I'm not really doing this at random. Tennessee's number 8 in the FPI.
That feels good. Joey Agnew, he's a proven starter.
Anything?
What are they use again? What do they use for the FBI? Like
it's proprietary. They won't tell you.
3 gerbils on a wheel. Like, I don't know.
Drugs, man, drugs.
Tennessee is number 8, gentlemen.
Okay.
It's like nobody's paying attention to the fact that they may not have a great wide receiving core. They lost their starting quarterback and replaced him with the guy he replaced at UCLA.
I'm not seeing the problem. Keep going.
Lost, some pretty good D linemen, although I think they are deep enough to replace them. I'm not saying this to slight Vol fans. God knows I don't want to get on the wrong side of all Twitter. But if you're going to cherry pick an SEC team to just throw up there at number 8, you could have gone South Carolina with the great returning quarterback, LSU with the great returning quarterback and the vastly improved defensive personnel, Florida with the very exciting quarterback. You could have gone Ole Miss.
Oh, yeah.
They've got Ole Miss at 10, though, which is higher than anybody I've seen have Ole Miss.
Too. That also seems high. Yeah.
I will say
USC at 14.
Right. Because if you go through the Big Ten,
it's perfect.
That's not like USC. It's interesting because we don't talk about them very much in terms of being competitive in the Big Ten this year. And maybe they will be, but it doesn't feel to me like even internally they're expecting to be competitive in the Big Ten until next year.
No.
I want to be, I'm not being glib for the sake of it, although I do enjoy adopting that posture. I now have in front of me the August 5th, 2024 coaches preseason poll. Okay. So we can make fun of
last year.
24. Yeah. Now we can make fun of the FBI, and we should, because it turns out the nerds don't know it nearly as much as we thought. But also, here's the coaches poll from last year. In the top 15 last year, Utah, Florida State, Michigan. Like, nobody's perfect on this stuff. Like, these polls are sort of
Michigan beat the national champs last year. Let's give them some credit.
No, that's not possible.
On their home field.
Wait, really? Wait. No, not that offense, though. Wait, they must have held them to like 10 points. That's not possible.
Very low scoring game.
Really? Wow.
There's a flag involved at the end.
How many points did Michigan score?
Not a lot, but more than Ohio State.
No. Wow. That's not possible. I can't. No, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's true. Remember, Florida State, we're in week 0 right now. Yeah. We're going to talk Farmageddon on Thursday. We're going to talk Kansas State and Iowa State and Ireland. But remember, Georgia Tech and Florida State were going to play in Ireland. And we were hyping this Florida State team up like it was going to repeat as ACC champs. They went 2-10.
Oklahoma State was also in here, Andy. North Carolina State was in here. And we should also just disclose that we all know this professionally. It ain't the coaches filling these things out. Okay. I have seen some of I think I have inadvertently helped do this one time sitting in a coach's office because they're like, oh man, I got to get this in. Like, hey, what happened yesterday? How does that sound? Like that is the level of precision and acumen being put into
a lot of times the sports information directors fill it out for the schools or
the ops guy,
football operations guys. I think I've been in SID's office while he is filling it out and helping.
You know who fills his out every week though, and it does it himself? Troy Calhoun. Shout out Troy Calhoun from Air Force.
That's right.
Takes great care.
Service Academy's honest. That's right.
By the way, Andy, I have a good ending for this show, and oftentimes we have done this historically when there's breaking news. We sort of just might as well just drop it in. We have breaking news. Auburn football has made an official announcement that they are claiming 4 additional national championships for a total of 9 national titles. So I'll go through them. Here are the new ones that they've added: 1910, 1914.
Who can forget?
1958, and of course, our favorite year, Coach Tommy Tuberville, 2004.
Yes.
And there you go. So they're going to be
I saw this claim 2004. Well, they are claiming. Do we remember what media outlet proclaimed them the national champions?
The People's Magazine or People's Choice?
No.
Or
Golf Digest.
Southern Living.
Digest.
Well,
they
were the Golf Digest national champions.
They do name all the polls for each of the years. In 2004, they list several, including Daryl Perry in GBE college football ratings.
Daryl Perry? Daryl! How's your mama in there?
I was so happy that when you said there was breaking news, I was like, he's not going to mention the Auburn thing.
Can I read you the 1910 Auburn schedule? So the Billingsley, this is one where they went back and retroactively tried to determine national champs. This was years ago when they did this. So they played a 7-game season. The winning team of every game shut out the losing team of every game. So they went
parody. We hear. Look, guys, we've been talking about it forever. Parody.
Yeah, they went 6-1. They won 6-0 against Mississippi A&M, which would be your alma mater, Ross.
That's right.
78-0 over Howard, Bobby Bowden's alma mater. He was not playing at the time. 17-0 against Clemson, which is Auburn with a lake. Suffered their only loss at Texas, 9-0. That's that's probably, like a 3-2 Mississippi State game type.
Probably
result.
A gout-related ailment or something that broke in. Yeah.
Then they beat Georgia Tech 16-0. They beat Tulane in the Harrison County Fairgrounds in Gulfport, Mississippi, 33-0.
The Harrison County Fairgrounds. I mean, that's like it's like a couple blocks from where I grew up. That's wild. Wow.
And then a 26-0 win against Georgia in Savannah to close out the year. There's your national champions. So I actually don't have a problem with that. The biggest one is this is Auburn saying we're going to do what Alabama does. The biggest one, the biggest fraud of these is Alabama claiming 1941. Any year you lost to Mississippi State and Vanderbilt, you are not the national champion. And that is 1941 for Alabama.
Roll Tide.
Wow. So congratulations, Auburn, on your 4 new national championships. The Golf Digest one is my favorite, though I tend to agree with you. You should claim that one. All the others as well. We'll just have to talk about that later.
Never
6 months away from Barstool declaring a national championship, and we are 2 years away from some school putting it in their media guide.
Well, Barstool is going to declare Michigan the national champs at all times because Dave Portnoy is not going to really give anybody else a vote. So
until someone else pays them.
In the opposite of that, by the way, didn't the New York Times proclaim UConn the national champions of the COVID year because they were the only one? They were the first ones to decide not to play. Or am I thinking crazy here?
Nope, Ross. I so hope that's true because God Almighty is that on brand.
I'm going to choose
maybe too inside baseball, but my God, if you ever want a misread of anything that happens in a non-coastal state, wow, that would be so perfect. Was number 2 Old Dominion?
Probably.
I don't remember. I'm trying to pull it up, or maybe they just say they're the true winners of. No, this is it. Yes. I'm reading the real champion, the University of Connecticut, which was the first football bowl subdivision team to squarely face the coronavirus and decide against playing a single snap. The New York Times, January 4th, 2021.
You know who laughs at that? Devontae Smith.
We'd have a better
Devontae Smith's like, I'm glad we played.
We would have a better chance of explaining the SEC to an actual alien race than to most of the subscribers.
Well, actually, I'm going to help everybody. Speaking of an elitist East Coast publication treating college football like it is something from another planet, there's a New Yorker story on Bill Belichick coaching in North Carolina today.
Nope.
Uh-oh.
Nope. Don't have to do it, guys.
I'm not that far into it, but as far as I can tell, the only people they interviewed are a tailor and the editor of the school paper.
I think it's in my
hard-hitting journalism going on.
Yeah,
all right.
I don't think I'm allowed to swear on the show. You don't have to read everything, folks. You don't have to read
hoping,
everything.
we might as well plug this. We're hoping to have a Yahoo story next week from a visit with Mr. Belichick that I'll be having in the next 24 hours. So,
ooh, good luck.
We'll hope to have that next week. I'll interview someone other than a tailor, Andy.
Are you sit down one-on-one?
Find a student reporter that you can interview.
Yeah.
And be your lead quote.
What's that, Godfrey?
Are you sit down one-on-one?
We'll see.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good luck, buddy.
We're on to Wake Forest.
So.
Yeah. That's going to be a Bobby Petrino level of detached disdain. I want a full report though. I want to know how
I
want to know if is he warm and fuzzy? Is he going to show you the weight room?
We'll get to that next week, and then on Thursday we'll get to the West Virginia and Rich Rod visit.
Well,
that
now
I had
that
last week that was a little more,
Ross, I don't know if you could conjure up two polar opposites quite as well as you just have.
And that is what you got to look forward to. But Thursday, we will be talking actual by God football because we are importing Farmageddon to the unsuspecting nation of Ireland. We'll talk
Believe me, ag schools, Ireland, it's going to work.